Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hearing News. Kia ora, Chewy. How are you, love?
Good, bud.
Now, the question the world wants to know, how tidy is that house?
It's pretty tidy. It's not bad.
Do you want to tell people who went with us last night why your house has spectacularly been tidied in the last 24 hours?
My partner has been away for 6 weeks over in Brexit land. She's just come back, so I wanted a good impression. I did my good husband duties and didn't live in absolute squalor for 6 weeks.
And how's the projector going in the bedroom?
Yeah, not really good. Really good. Big tally.
When she gets back, is she going to be net side happy or net side upset about that in the bedroom?
Oh no, she's fine. She's back now.
She's back now.
Yeah. She came back early this evening.
And you're with us. Welcome back.
Yes,
Mrs. Chewy. Who was Chewbacca married? Chewbacca had a family at some stage, didn't it?
I think if you count the Christmas special, maybe.
Maybe.
Weird though. Prefer that never happened.
Okay. Hello to everybody. Thank you for joining us. The Elam debate was pretty good. Hope Raf wins. We're going to be talking about that tonight. Not the debate, because we haven't seen that because it was while we were prepping, but the actual what's happening in Elam at the moment. Hey, Simon. Hey, Mr. Anderson. JK's in there. Free Cells in there. Where did that one go? Was that one there? Oh, we meet. Oh, no, there's different people. It's going so fast. Add before BHN. Ad?
Oh, yeah. There's 3 people saying that they've got an ACT ad before they clicked on us.
Oh, so fantastic.
ACT's chucking some of their money. Obviously not to us.
Well, we get like 1/1,000,000th of a cent for that, don't we? Something like that.
Oh,
look, another one. Look. The first ad that on YouTube was an ACT ad. Hilarious.
I'm so sorry, fam.
Sorry, Fano. Maybe shall I unmonetize then so we don't make our $18 a month, whatever we make, and then people won't have to do that. Kia ora whānau. Look, man, people are here, man. People are getting involved. And all your other ones, hello as well. We haven't got all time for it. Before we just keep going, Free Soul reminds everyone to hit that like button tonight, folks. Have a huge. Simon Wilson's with us tonight. A bit of a kind of general conversation around sort of free expression versus free speech versus suppression of speech versus what rights we have to hear people's speech, especially in an election cycle. It's not an awkward conversation, but I think as we were just saying before we all came on air together, many of us were fine with the shouting down of Posey Parker as an example. So for consistency, do we have to be fine with the shouting down of a political figure, or is it different? I don't know the answer to it. Life's not often black and white, and this could be one of those things. So we'll
mulling this one over.
We'll mull this one over, and as we mull it over, Chewy, I just realized I haven't checked. Hey, let me just check some audio. I haven't realized I haven't just checked audio because we were chattering away. You can hear the music.
Yep.
You can hear it all good. Hear it fading away. Sorry, that's our unprofessional nature that we're doing our sound checks after we start the show. And now, speaking of being unprofessional, because that's the place we live. Remember, our merch store is open and running right now. If you purchase anything off the merch store whilst we're live streaming, so only while we're on air, you can get free delivery. And tonight's promo code, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, is Chewy. So
that's me.
That's you.
That's mine now.
Oh, no, different Chewy. Coincidence. So go to bhnshop.nz. We've got hoodies. This month, that is if the left votes, the left wins. We've got t-shirts this month, and we've got red ones and green ones. And we've also got just straight BHN merch, hoodies and t-shirts, black and white. And of course, the idea with the BHN merch is that will stay. That's not a limited run, but what is a limited run is that little OB down the bottom that you can see. And for people who went with us last night, we're only putting that on hoodies and t-shirts sold in 2023. What that means is if you buy from us this year, you are an original beardie. It's a bit like an original gangster. Oh, my camera just did two things while I wasn't watching. It means that you are an original beardie, i.e. you were with us on day one. So if you purchase during the show, then you get free delivery by entering the promo code Chewy. And a huge thanks to, I think it's Sheryl Lee. My eyes are too bad. All the way over there. It wasn't during the show, but yeah, Sheryl Lee got a couple of t-shirts today, Big HN t-shirts. So well done you. We appreciate you to bits. All right, let us, if I can find, because it's over there, I'm going to find my mouse, do that. And let's bring from New Zealand Herald, Simon Wilson, senior writer, in with us. Hey, Simon, how are you, man?
Hey there, how are you going, guys?
Very, very
Hey,
well.
Simon.
Chewy's going to talk to you briefly while I go fix my camera. So, you know,
Hey.
fill time,
Hey,
guys.
Chewy.
Off you go.
Hey, man.
Let's do the whole thing right now, you know.
At some stage, Pat's going to do something about that camera, I assume. Have you followed much about the debate? I haven't seen anything about the island debate. Have you?
No, I haven't seen the island debate, and I'm sorry about that. I wish I had. I know they're coming up to Auckland. Well, Top Party's coming up to Auckland this week. Now I'll go along to that one. But I haven't seen the island debate. No.
We'll give out all the results and stuff of that. Well, not the results of the debate, but there was a courier poll done alongside that debate. It shows Top's not in a particularly good position, but we'll give all that information as we go through the night. But thank you for padding so professionally, you two. Whilst we now get into the summation of the reason that we're here to have a chat. So this was 8 days ago in Otara, the Otara markets, when this group from Destiny Church came on board to protest Chippy being there. Let's have a little bit of a reminder as to what happened on that day.
No more Labour paints!
No more Labour paints!
Raucous Freedoms NZ supporters giving it to Labour in spades.
No more black roll!
No more black roll!
A few
Why is it spades? It's from the cards. Why isn't it clubs or hearts? Or I don't know. I've never thought about that before. Sorry for the tangent already.
braved picks, but eventually, though, Labour's campaign photo op was successfully derailed. Chris Hipkins keeping his chin up.
It's democracy in action, my friend.
He left the markets a little early.
That's an important comment, right? So at that time, it was democracy in
A
action.
little more philosophical later on.
Protest is an absolutely legitimate part of election campaigns. I just hope that those who are doing protest won't drown out the voices of those who want to engage positively in the campaign.
Do you feel safe? Are you looking to change the campaign approach this year?
Well, I'm really committed to getting out and about, meeting New Zealanders, talking to New Zealanders about the issues that are at stake in this election.
So there we go. So that was stage one. Also some commentary from political commentators on that same night as well. Bryce Edwards said,
I think a number of us commentators are very worried about the rising divisiveness, toxicity, and nastiness in politics at the moment.
But he doesn't think this protest was out of line.
It's the right of the public to be able to chant against politicians and to express their dissatisfaction. It looked like the free expression of political opponents against a government.
so that was the feeling on that date, right? And then of course the very same protesters, oh, that's not the right one. Hang on. What's that one? 253. That's not the right one. That's the one there. And then of course, no, I might not have had the other one. We had, I haven't got it. We had the situation yesterday where Christopher Luxon was heckled, right? I think I can probably find it. Sorry, guys. 15 seconds. Is it 15 seconds? So we'll just go to here. So the situation yesterday with the same individual from the same group heckling Christopher Luxon,
say to you, I think what you're seeing is a very unstable coalition of chaos.
Ooh, speaking of chaos,
You've actually got
this guy popping up to heckle Christopher Luxon.
Sorry,
We
mate.
haven't seen you in Otara, Mr. Luxon.
I think you're a candidate for Vision, right?
We're part of Freedoms New Zealand.
A fringe party prone to causing commotion with the Chris's,
You're saying you're the better of the two Chris's, Mr. Luxon.
not letting up despite efforts to pull him down.
Well, the real Mr. Chris Luxon.
Oh, you're a
please
funny
stand
guy,
up.
mate. You're a real funny guy. You know Slim
you say
Shady,
you're
buddy.
a Christian, but then you're not changing anything with abortion.
Yeah, mate.
You're not doing anything with
Why don't we come and
transgender.
chat to you
We've got
afterwards if
families
you
that
want to
are
be
concerned, Mr.
respectful?
Luxon.
But you're not being respectful.
Luxon giving up.
I'm just asking, will the real Mr. Chris
Okay,
Luxon
sorry. We'll go
stand up?
inside because
Yeah, I'm asking for Mr. Luxon.
So then we'll just go to this second part of the clip, which is an understanding that there could need to be police involvement for what's going on at the moment. So let's have a listen to that part of the clip.
Almost certainly. After the parliamentary protests, it is clear that Brian Tamaki and his lot will do everything they can to disrupt. And the police have been planning for it. In a ministerial briefing, they said that there had the potential to be threats to the general election and to some of the candidates, and that would require a significant response. Chris Hipkins said today that that could even look like cops on some of the candidates, which is a total shame that such a vocal yet tiny minority is able to disrupt the democracy that we've come to know.
And finally, today as well, comments from Chippy. So remember, it was Democracy in Action a week and a half ago. It was fine, we were a week and a half ago. Same group of people protesting yesterday to Christopher Luxon, and this was the response from Chippy.
It's clear that Brian Tamaki and his mob are very determined to disrupt the election campaign. Ultimately, that's anti-democratic. They're denying all New Zealanders the right to hear from all political parties. Christopher Luxon is absolutely entitled to hold a press conference. He's entitled to share his views with the New Zealand public, and the New Zealand public are entitled to hear those views as well. So same with me, same with every other political party leader. I'm not going to go around disrupting other party leaders or other parties' press conferences. I think a party that thought it had any shot of getting into Parliament wouldn't be doing that. This is just Brian Tamaki and his team trying to make a lot of noise and disrupt everybody else.
So I wanted to play all of those clips, all of those short clips, to give us all a little bit of a history lesson or a remembrance. 8 or 9 days ago, part of democracy. This is what we do. Protest is an important part of it. Same people, a week and a bit later, this is a danger to democracy. Now, we in the past have been supporters of loud, raucous protest. I think about Victoria Jacobs at the Julian Batchelor situation with her whistle. I can think about the loud voices at the Pāti Parker. We're in support of that, right? We have a similar vibe here, but for want of a better word, and I'm not dragging you necessarily into this, Simon, but for me and Chewy, but for the other side, do we need to stay consistent and go, well, that's a part of it, it's just how it goes? Or is it different with democracy? Sorry, is it different with politics? Because Christopher Luxon was speaking to the country about an upcoming election, yet Pāti Parker was speaking to a person about a personal ideology, and where does that sit? How about we throw you the ball first of all, Simon, since you're the guest, and you clear it all up for us, and we don't have to do any thinking about this.
It'll only take me about 3/4 of an hour. You got that?
Okay, fine.
I think there are differences, and I'm not sure that's where I'd make the split. But before I get to that, I did want to go back and just mention that this is not something that's especially new in the last couple of weeks. We know that in this country, since 2020, there has been a growing movement of really vocal, noisy, disruptive opposition to the government on a range of issues, and they have been as aggressive as they possibly could be without starting to hit people. And we know that was particularly aimed at Jacinda Ardern, to the extent that it became clear that the old wonderful thing that used to happen in New Zealand politics of politicians would go into shopping malls and would be able to do a tour of shopping malls, and go to schools and do those sorts of things. We know that those things actually got stopped under Jacinda Ardern because they were simply not possible anymore, because there were people screaming at her, throwing things at her, shouting, abusing, and making the whole process impossible. That isn't a good thing. That's really not a good thing. I think Amelia Wade's comment that in our democracy we need the space for democracy to function, I think that's a really good point to make. And we now find ourselves in the election campaign where we know that there are political forces who are intent not on political debate, but simply on destroying the process. It's very hard to know how you manage that, because you absolutely do want to allow people to be protesters. I've been a protester a lot in my life, and protest has to be disruptive, or it's not really protest. It's not effective as protest. So you've got to allow that process. So unlike Hipkins, my view of what happened in the Otara market and what happened to Luxon and Botany is a little bit flipped in a way. I thought Luxon was a very minor thing. It was funny. Luxon handled it well. I don't see a particular problem with that. But the constant shouting down when Hipkins was trying to make his way around the Otara market, that seemed to me a little bit more serious. That's akin to you cannot make your way through the shopping mall situation. I think that where I would want to try and draw a distinction would be between those people who want to engage in the democratic political process of this is the vigorous exchange of ideas, and we might be going to shout at each other, but we are going to have this done in a way that where all sides will respect that we're engaged in this for democratic outcomes, and people who don't buy into that, who actually want to tear down the democratic outcomes. I chaired a session in a candidates debate in a church a couple of weeks ago, and the vicar at the church told me a week or so before it was on that she had organised security for the night, and so there were security guards on the door, and I thought, what? And actually what happened in the meeting was that there were 4 different parties represented. They all turned up with their crews. It was very boisterous, very noisy. Everybody got cheers and boos and all the rest of it, and it was very exciting, and it was a terrific night. And that seemed to me to be the way it should go. You don't need to be quiet and submissive. You can be as boisterous and noisy and do all of that. And people got booed when they said stupid things, or things that other people thought were stupid and so on. But it didn't get to the stage of we're just not going to listen to you at all. We're just not interested in what you got to say. We're just going to shut you down. It didn't get
so if the protest is a part of the conversation, almost, it seems okay. If it's just really there to be, I don't know, difficult, to push back for no reason, to make noise without purpose, can we define what that is though? How do we decide that?
That's the first point. The second point is, and you mentioned Posey Parker before, there's an imbalance in a lot of these things. Posey Parker's purpose here was, in my view, possibly in yours, to stir up hatred against the trans community. I don't think there's any other way to look at it. And you can't just say that that's just part of the civil discourse. That's actually stirring up hatred. Right. So people have to make it really clear that stirring up hatred isn't going to be tolerated. It's a really fine line, though. It's a really hard thing to do, because you're not actually...
how do we know? I mean, I'm not suggesting you're wrong. I kind of think you're right, but there's also that adage of, it's the people who win the war that write the books. Like when we're saying it's stirring up hatred, others are saying it's not, and we can't assume that we're always going to be 100% right in our life and our decisions. So how do we know? How do we make this? That's where I guess those free speech periods, although there's no such thing as a free speech period, to go, it's either all or nothing. That's when they do that.
Yeah. It's the old classic Marxist approach to it used to be, well, if you're on the right side, then you've got the rights, and if you're on the wrong side, we're going to shut you down. We know that's wrong. We know that's wrong now. You can't have a vigorous democracy if you're simply going to assume that actually on one side everyone's right, and on the other side everyone's wrong, and therefore it's okay to oppress them. You can't do it like that. So it becomes more complicated. I think in this country now, and we're not alone, I think we need to put a high premium on civic respect, if you like. We need to be aware that there are people out there who are looking for the opportunity to be violent, who are looking for the opportunity to enrage other people who are enraged themselves. And I think we've got to resist that with respect. I think we've got to keep asserting that it's important to have a discourse. I'm doing a debate in a few weeks' time with people who I find completely obnoxious, but I'm going to do it because actually I'd rather talk to them than throw things at them. And they might throw things at me, and we'll see how that goes. But
what do you?
But I'd rather have the talk.
What do you reckon, Chewy? Me and Simon have been yabbering away for a bit.
Obviously I'm going to preface this by saying, everything that Vision NZ or whatever they're calling themselves today runs completely in the opposite direction from what I believe. I have a problem with them being called protesters, though. Because they are a registered party. They have a candidate.
Political
right?
operatives.
Yeah. So I mean, calling them protesters doesn't really cut it. They had the billboards. They were running a rally at the same time that Hipkins was. And yeah, I don't see a problem with that. There's a couple of people in the chat that have pointed out that there seems to be like a real disconnect between what they did with Hipkins and interrupting a press conference. Like a press conference is a more organized sort of thing.
Formal?
It's not a debate it's not a debate or whatever.
People do interrupt press conferences, though. I mean, I've been in those media stand-ups a lot as media, and members of the public turn up and kind of ask their own questions and
throw
interrupt,
dildos.
and that too. And usually there are managers there to try and manage that. But it happens, and if politicians are going to stand up in a public place and pontificate, the public has the right to be there. It's how the politician wants to do it. The Otara Market thing, that's a popular place in Auckland for political debate in election times, and I've been there often at election time. And what usually happens is that there's the Labour Party, there's the Pāti Māori, there's the Greens, there's National, they're all there, and they're all got their stalls out, and they're all got a loud hailer, and they're all doing their business. And they don't come face to face usually. They like all the other stall holders in the market, they attempt to sell their wares and get people to buy from them, but they do it at their stall.
I mean, that might imply what Chippy. It's also the best place to get chop suey in all of Auckland. It also therefore maybe that comes back to what Chippy said, is if these people had a chance of getting in, they probably wouldn't be doing it. The people that are, let's say, professionally aligned with politics adhere to sort of the unwritten rules. The people who aren't actually in politics, they're just going to be like, fuck it, I'll do whatever I want, and this is what I want to do. Maybe.
I think the other aspect of it, and this is, I guess, my rebel side coming through, right? You're trying to take on the two biggest, most established political parties in the debate, right? You're not going to get the press to pay any attention to you because you're a fringe group run by a madman. So yeah, why not insert yourself into their settings? It's got them press. It's worked. You're absolutely right. They led the news last night. I think you're right about that. It is really difficult. And that's what I said before. The guy leaning over the fence and engaging in a pretty almost witty way with Luxon, who engaged wittily back with him, doesn't worry me at all.
Wow.
The people who shout down politicians so they can't be heard, and are only interested in doing that, and that worries me more.
The worst part about that guy living over the fence was it allowed Luxon to make a joke about Eminem, showing him some kind of relative knowledge about an artist whom I love, and making him a little bit more like of a real person, as opposed to thinking, oh, he listens to music from the 50s.
So can you explain this to me? When he said, you're not, Slim Shady,
it's a song from Eminem.
I know it is. I absolutely know it. Yeah. But is that what he meant? I mean, what did he mean?
That would absolutely make it better, right? If he said that line and then turned back to the press and goes, I am, of course, referring to Eminem, the rapper. And just explain himself a little bit.
I wonder if Luxon knows more about Eminem now because of the court case at the last election where they got sued by Eminem. Maybe that's where they started their knowledge.
You think that's what he might have been talking about?
Hey, let me ask you something else, and this is a bit of a diversion, but based around that interaction. is, Simon, probably with you as well, but me and Chewie have been talking about all these dilemmas that Luxon has. One of the one around abortion and his Christianity. We heard that protester, that Freedom Vision New Zealand candidate, say to him, I thought you were a Christian. You're doing nothing about abortion. You're doing nothing about trans people. And we're like going, I wonder if at any stage Luxon has to pick between what his religious beliefs might be and what a secular government should be, how that will pan out. Because you can see there is a sector of the Christian world who are going, you should be doing this more Christian-y, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to be a problem for him, Simon?
I think it is always going to be a problem for him. And I don't understand Chris Luxon's Christianity because the church he is said to belong to is relatively fundamentalist. But there's not much he does or says in his political life that reflects that. So is he being a hypocrite? Or did he belong to that church because it's just what he thought was the right thing to do at the time and he's moved on? He's never explained this, and it would be great if he did explain it. We do know that in his party, if you look at his party list for this coming election, there are quite a lot of fundamentalist Christians on that list in reasonably good places. Agnes Lahini is there. Agnes Lahini was the only MP that I know of who turned up to the Nigel Farage meeting in Auckland a few years ago when Farage came out shortly before COVID struck. She was there to hear him, and she was a national MP at the time as a list MP. I was at the Botany selection meeting when Luxon was selected for that seat, and Agnes Lahini was one of the people who stood against him, wanted that candidacy. And she talked long and hard in her election speech about her values and the party's values, and she aligned her fundamentalist Christian values with the National Party's values in a way that made them indistinguishable. It was astonishing. Now, she didn't get the nod, which maybe tells you something, but she was clearly to the right of Luxon in that that fundamentalist Christian sphere. It's not the only kind of Christianity, of course, but there she was, and she's going to be back in Parliament, and she won't be the only one. It is odd that Luxon, while he talks about a whole lot of things that are nothing to do with any of the fundamentalist Christian values he's supposed to adhere to, it's odd that he does belong to that church still, and he hasn't explained himself.
What I hear you saying is it's almost like either his Christianity means nothing because there's no outworking of it in his politics, or his politics means nothing because it doesn't align with perhaps his fundamentalist views. It's what I'm saying. It would be great for him to explain this because it doesn't make sense. He's not the first. He's not the first. I was going to say he's not the first. You remember Bill English? Bill English, staunch Catholic. Absolutely staunch Catholic. So these are politicians who vote against progressive issues, and then when they get passed anyway, marriage equality is a good example. Turns out not to be an issue, not to be a problem, and they never raise it again. Luxon has made it very clear he is not going to put, or says he's not going to put abortion back on the list for reconsideration. I don't know. He also said he personally believes it's murder. If you think something's murder, aren't you morally obliged to try and not do it? Especially if you're in a position to change people from murdering other people.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Chewie?
I mean, he's so close to having a position. He just just give him time. We've just got to get to know the guy, right? But yeah, I mean, you bring up Bill English. That's a perfect example, right? He made it very clear that he was voting this way because of his faith, but at the same time, he acknowledged that people had a personal choice. I think he was much more coherent in this than Luxon is, where he's kind of like, well, guys,
Luxon just won't talk about it. Yeah,
turn to pink, and it's almost like I think back to Judith Collins doing that performative prayer thing for the cameras last
the
election.
kneeling.
that a lesson hasn't been learned here, that stuff just does not play with the general electorate. And you can look at the stats of what religion, people that consider themselves religious or that sort of thing. It's not a growing market. It's something that will turn off so many people, but some of them seem to be leaning into it in almost an American fashion, and it seems to be from that very American flavored fundamentalists.
Well, I think that's right. I think they're leaning into it because there's a constituency there, and especially after Labor, who want to kill every baby at 8 months and 14 days and that kind of stuff. That they're looking for. I mean, I've sat in churches where when John Key was coming in and heard from the front that John Key is God's choice. I've heard it in churches, and I always say to people who say that, well, was God off at the last election when Helen Clark got in? Did God take that election off? Because if this is God's choice, then what, he wasn't powerful enough to do it last time around? I don't get it. So that's out there, and it's a voting block, Chewy. So that's what I think it's probably primarily a voting block.
You're down in the weeds of the really difficult issue of if God's making choices, then how come he's choosing our sports team and not yours, and yours and not ours, and all of that? And it obviously doesn't make sense.
Really interesting.
I think back that there was, what was it? Must have been Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan or something. They bring that up as well. God's on our side, right? And the Germans think that the God's on their side. So which one is it? I guess we'll find out.
I'm just going to say this becomes potentially dangerous if those hard right protesters, not protesters, those hard right political activists are intent on trying to crash the democratic process. If that's what they're trying to do, because God is on their side, this is going to be a really difficult next few weeks. It's really hard because we do want to preserve the idea that you can have vigorous political debate in public, live. People can meet politicians. Politicians should be able to walk down the street and meet members of the public without feeling that they're going to be attacked.
Yeah, maybe if you push it too far, Rob Muldoon will punch you in the stomach. But
we don't live in those days anymore, do we? I mean, it's different now. I mean, I think
it was a union organizer that
called
him Peggy or something like that.
Yeah, we all now need to know people are people. They're not pigs. They're not animals. They are people, and we all need to know that politicians have the right to feel safe, because then we can have democracy functioning well.
Do you think just with how people are post-COVID, everybody seems to be just a little bit off kilter, people getting angrier, quicker. We've seen people go down the rabbit hole and just really extreme beliefs. Do you think it's a combination of that? What would have been seen pre-COVID of a little bit of a political party just having a little bit of cheek and poking their head over the fence. And now we're thinking, well, next time is it going to be an armed mob comes up and decides to solve something? We look at Voices for Fuckwits and that sort of thing and go, well, those guys want to make our process completely ungovernable. So where's the line?
We're looking at something else that's happening here. It's not just the COVID frustrations and anger, and everyone's a bit more short-tempered and all of that. We all know that's happening. We're also looking at an American-inspired, calculated attack on democracy. And we see that happening in America, and we know the links are there to the groups in this country. And it's pretty frightening.
And to the right wing echo chambers that are also doubling down, and that's why you see, like what we're doing right now, 4 or 5 versions of what we're doing on the right in New Zealand, all massively funded, massively.
That's
funded.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, the weapons at our disposal are civility and speech and behaving decently to each other and doing all that. And you know, that's what I'd like to think. It's harder to do it that way. It's much easier to just shout everybody down to become violent eventually.
Hey, just one last question, and we've got to get on to talking about tax and stuff with National and the Ireland result. But I don't know if we've quite touched on this, and I don't want to have another half-hour conversation, which it might turn into. But the main difference between shouting down a political figure trying to tell people and shouting down a Posey Parker, is it because the Posey Parker it's the hate thing as well? But is it anything to do with it's a personal individual with an ideological view versus someone almost giving out, it's a PSA, what the political party is doing as a public service announcement, what she's doing as a personal ideology. Is that one of the big differences?
That's an interesting way to put it. I would say one of the big differences is that when Posey Parker turns up, and you remember Molyneux and Southern came along a few years earlier, they're here to stir up hatred. They're here to organise the far right. That's what they're here to do. And it is important for people who are upset about that and who are feeling threatened by that to stand up proudly and say, we're here to resist that. And that's what happened with Posey Parker. And there were some things, maybe one or two things went too far. Maybe that's happened, but actually the protest, the big protest against her, what a fantastic thing that actually she got told this is not who we are in this country. Bugger off.
Yeah, fuck off. Yes, it's true that one woman didn't get a chance to speak, but hundreds did who were saying the opposing from here. All right. Absolutely. Hey, Simon, thank you, sir. We really appreciate you being on board, and we look forward to having you back, especially with me and Simon talked beforehand about maybe doing something on the debate nights, Chewy. So we'll figure that out. Appreciate you. And look, Simon, I know you write big, important things for big, important newspapers, but if you want to use any of this content in your next column, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, Pat.
All right, dude.
Okay. See you guys.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate.
And a huge thanks to Nicole, to Brent. Nicole is in Dunedin. Woohoo! Brent in Waiheke, Stephanie in Nelson, and Mark in Auckland, who all got merch whilst we were talking to Simon. Very, very cool. Anything in the chat you want to get to before we move on to, we just got to be real careful here because National is the party who's going to give tax cuts and put more money in your pocket unless something happens tomorrow that takes some money out of your pocket. But we'll talk about that shortly.
Ava here says my local MP McAnulty travels to remote areas of the electorate and had to stop advertising those trips because of harassment. Denies opportunities for representation in those remote communities. Absolutely. I remember reading that and feeling like that was something that was going to be a big loss. Gareth says here, watching the debate on the working group tonight, candidates getting heckled while trying to answer questions. Yeah,
but like Simon said, if that heckling is like a part of the robust to and froing, it's different from just being shouted down and stopped. Maybe.
Yeah. Look, I'll put my hand up here. Right, I saw John Key in the Westgate Mall in Lower Hutt a few election cycles back. He was literally kissing babies in front of the cameras, and I screamed from the top deck that he was a liar. And look, that's just one of those things. I mean, I remember in Wellington as well, they had a very famous debate series where people were encouraged to come with water pistols and to squirt candidates with bad answers. I love that. Like, we go back a bit and Stephen Joyce getting hit by a dildo.
Yeah, that's the best.
Everyone, including Stephen Joyce, thought that was pretty funny. But now, what if it's not a dildo?
Yeah.
What if it's a brick? The only politician that should have bricks thrown at him is someone like Oswald Mosley. I'm okay with that.
I remember George W. Bush having the shoe thrown at him, and he was very. And he got out of the way of it quite quickly. So, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, what if it was a knife?
Yep. Free Soul says, we have a group of anti-vaxxers that follow our candidates around on street corner meetings. Yep. I think somebody in that, like an anti-vaxxer, had a go at David Seymour at one of his street corners. I saw footage of that. Pursuit here says, I think the anti-mandate protest has changed how people participate in politics. I don't know if the protest itself changed it. I think that the protest was a symptom of how people decided to interact with political structures and that sort of thing. And I think it's very much been influenced by how the Americans are doing it.
I wonder
or how those counter structures decide to engage.
I wonder if after any mass protest, let's think it's 1981 Springboks tour, which obviously was too young for, obviously, by decades. Like whatever the protests were in the subsequent years, I wonder if they had the feeling of the Springbok tour, you know, the same sort of vibe. In other words, I wonder if this carry on from the Wellington protest is actually because that's just been the last big protest. And it's just people who have done it are still doing it. I wonder if there were 2 or 3 or 4 protests once the Springbok tour was over had the same feel as the Springboks protest. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe we should try and find an expert or a historian to ask that question and find out if it flows on. And if it does flow on, how long for? Or is this unique and people have learned a new way to do it and they're going to hold on to it no matter what?
I've seen a lot of people try and equate those two things, and you know, the anti-tour protests were pretty seismic for New Zealand's discourse on a really emotive issue.
Yeah,
you know, human rights and apartheid and that sort of thing. And I definitely think that the most recent Parliament protests are sending ripples through our discourse. But yeah, I don't know if I'm just on the other side of it, so I'm
also not obviously not equating the causes either. I'm just literally looking at a big protest and a big protest. But
yeah, I'm just talking about the effect that it's had on, say, New Zealand society.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wonder, you know, like I've almost had a visceral reaction when I've interacted with someone and then sort of realized that they've gone to the Parliament protest, and I'm kind of going, ugh. You know, I wonder if it was the same for people like, oh, you know, what were you up on the weekend? I was fighting the cops to stop the Springboks. You know, did those people face the same sort of recoil from people that didn't kind of get it to the same degree? It's an interesting discussion.
I'm interested in this idea of, you know, against Posey Parker, it was because people were fighting against hate. But I'm also interested in that there was many people who were thinking that they were fighting for good, having her there. And then this comes down to, and everyone knows what side we're on with that conversation, but if we take a step back, then it comes down to history will tell us who's right and who's wrong. And the same with the mandates. I mean, I'm obviously, again, we know where we stand on that. But I guess what I try and do, and everyone knows that I try and be balanced, we try and be sort of consistent here, is that if one side is going to protest and use tactics and we're okay with it, if the other side protests and use those same tactics, we can't really complain about it. But then we think about Posey Parker was talking hate, right? Whereas our political leaders are just talking policy, but then we're making a judgment that she is talking hate. Now, I think she is talking hate, but there are many who don't. So there are many who think she was talking, you know, women's rights and what's best for society. So those people will be thinking, well, but you shouted down our person who was talking good messages. You can't now defend your politician who's spreading good messages. So yeah, and I guess that's the gray area to try and figure all this shit out, Chewy. Simon was supposed to figure it out for us and didn't do it.
I have very strong views, obviously, on political parties and candidates and the positions that they take as well. But I look at that of going, I am diametrically opposed, or I think that you're a liar, or something like that. Someone like Parker Posey, or say if we had the reborn image of Oswald Mosley marching through the country, that's just evil. That's hate. That is talking about taking out an entire section of your society because of who they are.
Yeah,
like that's a very different discussion, and it would provoke a very different reaction from me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I would go to a debate and yell at a candidate for a shitty position or something I felt really strong about. But yeah, I'd be throwing bricks at someone like Oswald Mosley. It's just, yeah.
Hey, time to move on. Fantastic. Well, if there's more chats coming in, we're more than happy to share them as we go through the night, even about that one. I want to share some information with you that you may not know about. Apparently, Chewy, National is the party of tax relief. This was on their Instagram a week ago, right? Tax relief for Kiwis. This was on their Instagram also a week ago. Party of lower taxes. This was on their Instagram 6 weeks ago. Let me just do that.
Cost of living crisis, the ute tax, the Auckland regional.
Sorry, this is what they're getting rid of.
Grant Robertson's planned income insurance jobs tax, the 10-year Brightline extension, and the removal of interest deductibility on rental properties.
So anyway, we know that
they're generous.
They're the party of taxes. Now they're releasing their tax policy tomorrow. I have approached a couple of people to come and speak to us about it. We'll see if I hear back from them. I won't say who it is, because if they say no, then they shouldn't get any grief. But there's been some hints at it today, right? National to propose new revenue measures to pay for income tax cuts. Revenue measures, Chewy, i.e. we need to take some more money in. How do they get revenue measures, you might ask? National's
GST, 20%.
Well, who knows? National's finance spokesperson, Nicola Willis, says their tax plan will include new, quote, targeted revenue measures to help pay for its income tax cuts. It comes ahead of partly releasing its new tax plan, which Willis told Morning Report on Tuesday would let working people, middle income earners who are particularly squeezed, keep more of what they earn. So someone's going to be paying for it. And notice they didn't talk about low income earners or beneficiaries, right? But working people, middle income earners will be better off. That implies that the rest, well, not the rest, because the wealthy won't be under National, but that others will be worse off. When announced, Willis said the view most New Zealanders would have is, gosh, why weren't those taxes already in place? New taxes coming.
I know what it is.
Oh, good. Hold on to that for a second.
Surely.
She and party leader Christopher Luxon gave more details when speaking to reporters at Parliament on Tuesday, including confirming the tax policy would be unveiled on Wednesday. Willis said it would include 4 new sources of revenue. We've put it together in a way so that it's self-funding, so that even if Labour, as predicted, leave the books in a total mess, we can guarantee that working New Zealanders will get a tax break. So that's not retirees and that's not beneficiaries, right? It's working New Zealanders. There will be 4 additional revenue measures in our tax plan. They will be specific and they will be targeted. Chewy, we're going to play a little story here about what the Prime Minister has said about this. But beforehand, I feel like you've got something to say.
Surely it's the churches.
They've already announced it's not going to be churches and it's not going to be charities.
Oh, okay.
Which sucks.
That's who I think about it.
Hang on. Just what that whole conversation we just had about someone's evangelical views. Do you think he's going to go, right, let's tax the churches now? It's not, I mean, I think it should be the churches. I'm happy for it not to be the charities, but it should be the churches, because the stupid example of sanitarium always comes up. The sanitarium don't pay tax, even though they make tens of millions of dollars a year, obviously not profit, they're not allowed to. But of money per year, that's tax-free because they're a part of the Seventh-day Adventists. I think it should be taxes, but they've already announced it won't be charities and it won't be churches.
But that's what Nicola said. She said, I think it'll be something that people go, I can't believe that wasn't taxed. And that's what it is.
So what about this? I've got something for you.
Targeted revenue. What did she call it? Targeted revenue something or other?
I'm going back. There will be 4 additional revenue measures in our tax plan. They will be specific. They will be targeted, which is every tax.
Have you ever like just tripped over yourself so hard to come up with a term instead of just saying tax?
Yeah, of course.
Because you've painted yourself into a fucking corner. It's like, oh, there's no new taxes. GST is going up. It's not a new tax. We're just increasing it.
So this is what's happened, right? I'll tell you what's happened. The National Party have come out with all these promises. Tax relief, lower taxes, all these taxes they're taking off. They've then done their numbers and gone, we're a bit short. we're going to need to find additional revenue elsewhere. Now, we can't call it tax, because if we call it tax, then we're not giving tax relief for Kiwis. That means the Greens are going to be the party of taxes, which they already are, tax relief, I should say. So we'll call it specific and targeted, like every tax. What tax is not targeted or specific? You know, all those taxes they get and they just throw out like seed. You know, they're just like, we don't know who's going to pay them, Chewy. We don't target these ones at all. I'll tell you something it might be. I don't think it'll be this, but I'll tell you something it might be, and it could be. I think that we shouldn't give money back to people who make donations. You know, if you make a donation to a charity, it's not the charity that misses out, but the government gives you a percentage of that charitable donation back. Why? If I'm giving $100 to UNICEF, why do I need the government to give me some money back for the money I give to UNICEF or to World Vision or to Save the Children? That wouldn't be taxing the charities or the churches. It would be taking a tax refund back off me. I think if it's going to be anything,
cover everything, though, is it?
Well, they said there's 4. There's 4 new targeted areas. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go and have a look at what Chippy had to say about it and others, remembering that we don't have the announcement yet. It will be coming out tomorrow. But let's see what they all are mulling over at the moment.
Tato katoa, good evening. National's come up with a way to pay for its tax cuts, 4 new taxes.
The party is set to announce its plans tomorrow and is giving away little about what they might tax. But here's our political editor, Jenna Lynch, with what we know.
Already these guys are coy. I'm so excited that you're so excited about our tax plan. You're just going to have to wait till tomorrow.
Guarding their tax policy as closely as a top secret government budget, only confirming the date.
Again, you'll just have to wait till tomorrow till you see the full details of our plan.
We will be announcing our tax plan tomorrow.
On the eve of their big reveal, sprinkling teeny little nuggets like...
There will be 4 additional revenue measures
So 4
in
new
our
taxes.
tax plan. Yep. They will be specific. They will be targeted.
Additional revenue measures, a political euphemism for more tax. The Red Team revelling in it after years of tax attacks from the Nats.
Speaker, I'll tell the member what's desperate. Spending 2 years saying that tax cuts are affordable and now desperately trying to scrabble together 4 new taxes in order to pay for them.
So the speculation starts. Churches and charities are currently tax exempt, meaning businesses like Sanitarium or churches like Destiny's don't pay tax.
Are you going to tax churches and charities?
Again, we'll have to wait till tomorrow when we announce our tax plan.
That's not a no.
We'll wait till tomorrow until we announce
We won't be giving a yes or no to any guesses you make today.
The not no answers prompted National's spin team to do a damage control dart around journalists, stating churches and charities were off limits. The Prime Minister, however, mulling the idea. Now it's been brought to light.
It's not something that I'd rule out. Businesses, you know, I think the Sanitarium is the one that gets raised all of the time. I'm certainly open to looking more at that, yeah.
As the National Party put out speculative tax fires, the government fighting a fiscal fire of its own, Labor failed to tell the Climate Change Minister that it was cutting climate funding.
I would have expected to know if there were going to be changes made that might make it harder for us to hit our emissions targets.
PM couldn't really care less.
They're not necessarily all things that are in James's portfolio area.
The cuts announced yesterday included $260 million from the Climate Emergency Response Fund, chucked back in the general government money pool. But the PM doubling down. No need to tell James Shaw.
If they weren't in his portfolio area, I wouldn't necessarily expect that they would be.
He's the Minister of Climate Change.
Almost every aspect of government activity has an impact on climate change.
Finance Minister, though.
I'll have a chat with James and apologise to him for that. He definitely should have known about it.
Sorry, James Shaw, the climate emergency doesn't trump the fiscal responsibility re-election project.
Now, Jen Lynch joins us.
There you go. Another little additional story on the end there, Chewy. So what do you think? So we'll find out tomorrow about the tax situation. They're saying churches and charities are out. They've got 4 new targeted areas, i.e. 4 new tax. And look, when National has a fair old crack at Labor and they draw a fair conclusion, we go fair conclusion. It is a fair conclusion for Labor to go, you guys that have been screaming, you know, no new taxes, get rid of taxes, to add 4 in to pay for your taxes. Surely someone hasn't done their numbers until recently and they've gone, ruh-roh, we need to find some more money to pay for these things we've already promised and we haven't done our numbers yet. We haven't costed it yet. And this is what they're doing. They're scrambling. I think that's a fair word, to find the revenue to do the promised tax cuts they're going to do, which means, should I bring that thing up about tax cuts, tax relief for everyone? If someone's paying taxes somewhere, that is currently a tax that's not there, rather than Nicola Willis saying, God, no one will have thought of these before, and everyone will look at it and go, why these? I bet you the fucking people paying them won't look at them going, why these?
Mm. So I'm going to come at this a little bit backwards. I am furious about the climate change stuff. Absolutely furious. Like, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. How, like, if we don't mitigate this sort of stuff, we're going to be paying 5 times the amount further down the track. It's fucking insane, and people want action now, and I'm one of those people. And so to see James Shaw treated so shabbily, and as far as I'm concerned, the conscience of this government is Robertson. Like, he seems to be carrying the can for everything. Pisses me right off. Sorry, rant. The other aspect is, first of all, I hate that National have made an announcement about an upcoming announcement.
Well, in fairness, In fairness, it's the journalists as well. Journalists are pushing. They do it every time. They did it with the Labour Party about the GST on fruit and veg. It's not just not National.
I hate it. I hate it. You had this media stand up where they go, well, you'll just have to see us tomorrow. Well, then just don't say anything. It's a waste of my time.
But did you notice that because they wouldn't rule in or out the churches, their spin doctors had to get around all the journalists to go, hey, just quietly, it's not the churches and it's not the charities. Because if they didn't, then they'd have a 24-hour news cycle that looked terrible to them.
Because that's where everybody's mind went. Where is there a pool of untaxed earnings where people would go, I can't believe that's not taxed. It's the churches. We all thought the same fucking thing. And if they did tax it, I tell you what, you get a lot of organizations suddenly doing a lot more charity work. Because that's what the whole idea is. We don't tax the churches because they're doing such good work in the community. And so many of them aren't. But they are buying lovely PAs. The other aspect of it, remember, National have been saying for months that they are going to pay for these tax cuts by cutting down on government waste.
Yeah.
They were so sure of it. There's so much waste. Labour's pissing money out the fucking windows. We're going to be able to give us so much of it back to you. And this reeks of, oh shit, actually, we're not doing too badly in the polls. We might win this and have to back up all of this bullshit we've been spewing. We have to find some money. Shit. So, yes, I think Labour and the Greens especially, obviously with the better tax cut policy, should hammer them, should get them on the ropes and don't let up.
Yep,
The
rightfully
party
so.
of no taxes, the party of lower taxes has 4 new taxes. And we're going to find out what they are tomorrow, and we're going to see how much of a castle made of tissue that Nicola has built for herself.
Let's have a look at some of the chats that have been coming in. Trickle down doesn't work. Name any country in the West where it works. It only works to increase the gap, increase crime, and lower working conditions. Mr. Anderson, based on the issue with climate change, says, I hope you don't need the Greens post-election, Chippy. Angela, I think it's Angela says, agreed, Pat, personal donations to charity shouldn't be able to be claimed back from the rest of us via the government. I just think it's an easy way to kind of find some money as well. Luxon has been out of his depth ever since he was elected as an MP, says V Bunch. Steph says, windfall tax. I wish. Mr. Arvid says, tax supermarkets, please. Sai says they're going to add more tax to coffee, chocolate, alcohol. And Planet Walk, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Says maybe it's the poor tax, the loitering tax, the parenting tax. Oh, I'm not even going to read that last one now because it might give them an idea, Planet Walk. The beard tax? Come on, please. That is not
just on the
okay.
mention of trickle down.
50 years of tax cuts for rich didn't trickle down. Yeah, of course not. If anything, I think we've always said this. If they wanted to try anything with the word trickle in it, it should be trickle up. I mean, that would be
It's not a small study either. 18 countries over 50 years, and New Zealand is one of them.
And it did not trickle up.
just insane. Like Chippy said the other day, he dropped a right-wing talking point about wealth taxes, that if we tax them, they'll just run off to another country. That's bullshit too. So, I mean, every time he gets a chance to say something, he fucking disappoints me.
We're going to keep moving because other things to talk about. Ilam. Raf is, I mean, I'd consider him a friend of the show. Had him on a couple of times. Like the man, like Top, like a lot of their policies. I remember talking about, I had this idea 15, maybe close to 20 years ago when I was working at ZB, wrote a piece about, you could give 18-year-olds a gap year and get them to work in one of the service industries like Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard. You pay them a stipend and you give them a 4-year degree for free in return. And then someone messaged me saying, that's a Top policy. I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you. Not so bad. So I don't mind them. I have a more serious issue with them getting in than I used to. And I'll talk to you about that later because there's been some polling done in Ireland. Let's have a look.
A new poll out tonight reveals a steep climb for the Opportunities Party in their bid to become the newest party in Parliament.
Top's best chance lies in Ilam, with leader Raf Manji sitting just 1% behind incumbent Labour MP Sarah Pallett. But as Kaylee Callaghan reports, the once safe national seat has a blue tinge to it again.
Top wants to turn Ilam teal, its only realistic opportunity to break into Parliament.
Absolutely critical. I mean, we've decided we needed to focus on Ilam. As a small party, I think getting in through an electorate seat is much more viable.
Ahead of tonight's electorate
Much
debate
more
hosted
viable,
by the
the only
working
way.
group, the Taxpayers Union Courier poll has National reclaiming a former party stronghold. The poll asked if the general election was held yesterday, which candidate would you have voted for? 33% said National's Hamish Campbell, 15% would stick with the status quo and Labour's Sarah Pallett.
Now, Raf, you might find this hard to believe, Chewy, but was on the platform today after all of that.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I suspect that's because times are difficult, polls-wise. But he says he's been leaked internal polling that puts him more like 23% and National at 27%. But it was, from my personal view, a bit disappointing to hear him on the platform after the stand he made. But that's what he said. He said they've got internal polling that shows different.
Just behind her, Top and Raf Manji on 14%, though 18% was still unsure. A long way to go for a teal takeover.
Well, as a starting place for this campaign, we're pretty excited. We have market research showing us a lot closer to Hamish, 23% versus 27%.
So that's the leaked information.
Sarah Pallett flipped the seat red in 2020 after 8 terms under Jerry Brownlee.
I'm actually pretty unsurprised. I knew that Raf Manji standing in Ireland was going to split the progressive vote. And what we've seen is exactly that. We've seen
I don't know if I buy that because he's not that progressive. Progressive, for people who, from my understanding of progressive, it's not just left, but it's kind of further left. Like Green voters. Splitting the progressive vote? I don't know. Unless she's using the term differently, meaning left. But I don't know if Top would split the progressive vote.
I would argue that. I would say a lot of the ideas that Raf was talking about are pretty progressive. He's certainly not a conservative. So
a lot of when I interviewed him, did we interview him or did I interview him? We did. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
A lot of his sort of financial economic ideas we've came across to me as very neoliberal. A lot of his social ideas came across as very, let's use the word progressive for now. So that puts him quite in the middle. But I mean, not all of them. I mean, he talks about the universal basic income and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm not sure. Let's get this finished, eh?
basically taken vote from me.
On this poll, she'll lose it after just one term.
I think it's very encouraging, but I'm not taking anything for granted. I've knocked on the doors of over 13,500 voters.
Raf Manji is hoping to break up the Labour national contest, banking on his popularity as a former multi-term city councillor to top the vote.
We've essentially got two backbenchers, one ranked 51, the other ranked 63, one who's a complete political novice.
The only ranking that matters is on election night, deciding if Ireland stays red, goes back to blue, or turns teal.
Right, and so just to have a look at those results for you, here's the results from the Courier Taxpayers Union poll. So this is for the party. The thing is, there's only 410 votes, so I don't know if that's a decent enough sample size. I know that once you go past 100,
it's very small.
Yeah, no, but once you go past 100, it seems to get quite accurate-ish. It's about a 4.5% margin of error. So that's not too little, but it would be better if it was 1,000. But out of 410, only 56 people said they'd be voting for RAF, right? That's pretty condemning at 14%. This includes unsure or refuse to answer. And if you exclude the unsure or refuse to answer, then he goes up to about 18%. It's a pretty poor poll. And I got to say, as much as I personally like RAF, here's the situation for those of us on the left. If RAF gets in, and let's say takes one person with him, right? Let's say there's 2 top MPs, and National and ACT get to 59 seats, then even though RAF has said he is going to sit across the benches no matter what, he did say when we spoke to him that he would consider giving supply and confidence. That actually gives National and ACT another option to form a minority government or a government. And I don't want to see National, as much as it seems to be people seem to be coronating Chris Luxon at the moment, but as much as they think that the conversation is over and Labor doesn't have a shit show, doesn't mean that I want to see that. I still don't want to see a National ACT government for my own personal ideology. So Top being there with 1 or 2 seats, sitting on the opposing benches with the opportunity of giving supply and confidence to National, means, statistically speaking, they're a danger to a left-leaning, left-wing government. And it also means it could exclude Winston Peters, and they wouldn't have to negotiate with him. Now, Winston Peters, as much of a difficulty he's being at the moment between him and ACT, I'm not saying he would ever go with Labor, but it might end up being that he is actually a handbrake to a National ACT government from having say for the next three years if he decides to sit across the benches and not give supply and confidence. So I'm even firmer now in my personal position about not giving Top my vote. I think the only thing that matters is an Ireland anyway, so it doesn't really matter for me. I mean, I don't think the party vote's going to get them there in any way, shape, form whatsoever. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. I like RAF. I happily have a beer with RAF. I spend time with RAF. I have him on again. But purely from a political point of view, he is a danger to left government getting back in. That might only raise the chances of a left government getting back in from 30 to 31%. But whatever that is, he's still a danger of having a left government. So I think if you are a left voter, Top gives you an amount of a percentage of more danger of having a right-wing government, Chewy.
I think the other thing to factor in with Ireland as well is just how angry Christchurch as a whole was with him. Like, as the earthquake recovery manager and the general mismanagement of how Christchurch was put back together after the earthquake, there is a white-hot rage directed at that man. So there's a reason why he lost that seat. And so I think the Labor candidate there sort of going, oh, they're splitting my vote. Well, you got a lot of protest votes that got you in. You had to retain them as well. So
give us a reason to vote for you. Give us a reason to vote for you. What is the reason to vote for him? Her.
The other thing is that, and this is a cheap shot, hand on heart, I acknowledge it. I have not seen a more soulless candidate than that National guy. It's like they stamped him out in a factory somewhere.
There you go. Look, we're going to do one more story because it's on the advertisement that we said we would. So let me just also say this to you one more time as well. The promo code Chewy officially goes for another 22 minutes. The promo code Chewy goes for another 22 minutes. If you're interested in getting some merch, we've got the left wins t-shirts and hoodies in green and in yellow for this month, and we've got BHN merch, hoodies and t-shirts with the original BD logo on the back, which will only be available for 2023. If you get one whilst we're live streaming, then you get free delivery. Yes, Pursuit, a 90-minute show. Yes, we get it. We're not men of our word. So that promo code delivery for free delivery is Chewy. It turns off at 10:30. So I just wanted to remind you guys that if you want to jump on board and get that free delivery, that only goes till 10:30. So here's the last story of the night, which is possibly one of the biggest. It's actually a really big news story for everybody.
90-minute show.
For everybody except Rawiri, who didn't seem to give a shit because he wasn't even there.
The Speaker today suspended the Pāti Māori co-leader Rawiri Waititi from Parliament for the day. It was over comments he made in the House last week that could breach a court-ordered name suppression.
But as political reporter Amelia Wade explains, Waititi wasn't in Parliament to hear his fate. He was participating in New Zealand Fashion Week.
Rawiri Waititi strutting his stuff. Is one of the stars of...
So to be clear, he got suspended from Parliament today on a day he wasn't there. He was doing a fashion show. That's how much he gives a crap about it.
Fashion designer Kitty Nathan's opening show at Fashion Week. But walking the walk meant he missed his punishment for talking the talk.
I consider that in his comments, Mr. Waititi's conduct was grossly disorderly.
Waititi last week shocked the Parliament when he used his privilege to make claims about an active court case. We can't publish his claims as they could breach a court-ordered suppression.
I can't believe, frankly, what I've just heard.
And neither could the Speaker.
It is a contempt of this House to knowingly make reference to a matter suppressed by an order of a court.
The problem with breaching suppression is that even discussing the suppression could breach the suppression. The Speaker carefully tiptoeing around it as he ruled on Waititi's comments.
Investigating it could be inconsistent with the order if one exists.
So the matter's off to Parliament's court to establish rules around discussing actual court.
Asking to consider how the House should deal with cases such as this.
And Waititi got a big telling off.
Although he wasn't there.
Rawiri Waititi and call on the House to judge his conduct.
Well, he's been named, which is a fancy parliamentary way of saying basically he's been a very naughty boy.
It's a really serious matter to basically start a fight between the Parliament and the courts.
Naming as a punishment dates back to before MPs were named in the House and is considered one of the most serious consequences a Speaker can hand down. The last MP to be named in the House was Nick Smith in 2019.
Waititi also got suspended for 24 hours.
The question is that Rawiri Waititi be suspended from the service of the House. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Pretty hard to suspend someone that's off, trying on suspenders somewhere else, isn't it?
Waititi away from doing his time.
It's not Dancing with the Stars.
Is on fashion design. Amelia Wade, News Hub.
There you go. So, I mean, it's an official thing. I do think it's interesting that it was basically, they were saying, he may have breached a suppression order to pass a judgment on someone who may have done something. I don't know. I guess it's fine because what is the punishment? Not much, but surely they should have waited to see if he did breach a suppression order. Just a little thought.
I think he came. I'm not surprised he got suspended. I don't think he would be surprised that he got suspended either. He walked right up to that line, and maybe there's an argument that he went over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he could give a fuck. I give him props for that. Yeah.
Yep. Cheer, Rawiri. That drip though. Rawiri is dripped out. So, yep. And I think it looked cool as well. He looked freaking fly as. I mean, you think about this, right? We should actually, maybe I'll do this. The two examples from the right was, do you remember John Key prancing down the thing for the Commonwealth Games or the whatever it was? And then there was, as you've said, David Seymour. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this David Seymour Dancing with the Stars. And then you've got Rawiri doing this, and you've got Jacinda Ardern last year doing it, looking just stylish as fuck. And it'll be this is what's going to be. It'll be who wore it better, the left or the right. And have Rawiri and Jacinda. I'm going to do it. I shouldn't have said it because someone will do it before me, but I'm going to do it. It'll be funny. If you're going to vote based on fashion sense, where would your vote go? That can be our official poll for tomorrow night. All right. Hey, thank you for being a part of what we're doing tonight, team. I'm just going to do a quick refresh of it. I know some of you saw my emails. That's why I was having a quick look to make sure there was nothing official that went out there, and there wasn't. It was just all orders from you guys. It was lovely of you. We appreciate you being a part of it. Is there anything that we want to get? Oh, yeah, there's a 16-year-old vote that went through its first reading today. Not too much to report on that, actually. That passed its first reading. It'll go through. It's for local body. It'll go through. And there was
I think it's a good move. It's a compromise. It's a half step. I wish they went all out, but it is the start of something.
Let me share something with you. Something I wrote today about that on my my Twitter feed, which is quite simply, I like arguments. I like good arguments. I like clever arguments. But I was watching the House when they had this conversation, right? And some cisgender white male National Party member said that the argument for 16-year-olds should be that they should be focusing on other things like study and sports. That was the argument. And I just thought straight away, and this is what I've written on Twitter, the argument's so stupid. It's so stupid because you could argue that they should be focusing on other things at any age. And I put up an example, mums of newborns should be focusing on their baby and not worry about voting. Family of people dying should be focusing on that person or their family and not worry about people voting. Someone going bankrupt should be focusing on their business and not worry about voting, and on and on and on and on and on and on.
I've got one.
You can always find a reason that people shouldn't vote because they should be focusing on something else. So it's an unintelligent argument. Yes, Joey.
Yeah. You should be focusing on your work and generating more profit for the shareholders.
And not focusing on voting. There you go. Easy. All right, team. Anything else you want to get to in the chat there? Anything else from the whānau?
No. We've had some very interesting comments just in the past 5 minutes. I've said my piece already.
I was looking elsewhere and I saw someone got booted. I'll talk to you about that afterwards. I don't. For people who know, because I'm kind of operating all the slidey things and stuff, Chewy is... Look, actually, one of the things, here's something I probably shouldn't say publicly. We might look for a couple of moderators for the chat as well. So if you're someone who's with us regularly, maybe you're someone who's in communication with me personally and you want to be a moderator, let me know. If we had a couple that were here most nights, then other people could. Because I was thinking about it on the night that we replayed. It might have been the RAF conversation and we weren't here. I wanted to have a moderator in the chat. I ended up watching it at the same time, so it was okay. So
I was in the chat as well.
Yeah. But if you're interested in being a moderator in the chat, then let us know. Contact us via the Facebook page or send me a message, and we might get one or two people who are here most nights. And if we're ever away or playing a replay, then we can have people help look after the little who dat. I've got to be careful saying that because my dog barks when I say it. Okay, guys. Tomorrow night then. Now, tomorrow night we will be talking about, I guess we'll have a look at the island debate, maybe. And also big news for tomorrow is obviously National is going to release their tax policies. We're all waiting with bated breath as to the 4 new taxes. You've got my prediction.
I'm going to sharpen my teeth.
Sharpen your teeth for it. Like and subscribe, not to be shortchanged on our 90-minute hours. Oh, do we need to hang around for 12 minutes just padding now, do we?
BHN, home of the 90-minute hour. We invented it.
All right, guys. Thanks for being with us tonight. Chewy's going to stay in his studio and just keep looking at the screen until 1:30. I'm going to go and have a shower, I think. So appreciate you being with us tonight. Big thanks to Simon Wilson for coming on board. You're very close to the screen right now. You're scaring me.
I'm just watching the chat.
All right. You're watching it.
I see what you're doing.
Yeah. All right. Catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Be safe, everyone. Remember, tomorrow night, bring a friend and head to bhnshop.nz should you want to participate in this month's merch or patreon.com/Big Hairy News if you want to be a part of the whānau. All the best, team. Hooroo.
See you.